Morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone's just up in front. This is your Thursday morning Tottenham transfer news, views and clues update. And guys, it is the day after game day. It is deadline day. It's the 1st of February, so we've just finished dry January. But for me, I start dry February now. And it's a lovely day. It's a beautiful day to talk about things related to Tottenham. Before we get into it, guys, can I ask you for some favours? Can you smash the like button for me? If you enjoy the content, it really helps the channel out. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And even if you have, double check you still are. Hashtag YouTube shenanigans are afoot. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. It is deadline day, but it's also post-game day, so not sure how to structure this particular chat. For what it's worth, I am going to be doing a lot of streams on various channels today. On this channel specifically, I think you'll see me late afternoon, sometime between 4 and 5 o'clock, around there. Keep a lookout for the live stream notification to talk about whatever's going on in real time in the transfer market, but also to look at the game in more detail with Dave, the Irish Hotspur, and Johnny, hopefully Johnny from Twitter, Johnny ITK, Johnny H3232, belated Devil's Advocate show. But before we do that, let's talk about what happened last night in the transfer news. So, Dominic Solanke stories, still percolating. A story that, as I've kind of assessed now, observed that 99% of the people that are in this chat that watch this channel you don't want him. Well, listen, I'd feel reassured by the fact that he is destined to start tonight against West Ham. And so it would be incredibly unlikely that he would play tonight and have time to squeeze in a transfer to Tottenham. And so I think we can put that story to bed for the time being. I could be wrong, but unless something really materialises today, then I'd be very, very surprised. So we'll move on from it. It will probably, if anything was to happen in that regard, or if anything was to happen with any kind of serious first team incomings, it would depend on some outgoings. And there's two stories that are very much in the zeitgeist right now. One of them is Bryan Gil to Brighton. According to Dan Kilpatrick, he has been given the green light from Tottenham to move to Brighton if he wants. But again, according to Dan Kilpatrick, it's not clear that he wants to go. Apparently he's very settled and happy in Tottenham for the time being. He's enjoying playing under Ange, even though it's kind of sporadic minutes. Maybe it's more down to the fact that he's finally acclimated and enjoying a settled life in London. Maybe he's, bridged the language barrier gap to a degree over the time he's been here. Maybe he's found more camaraderie and friendship with some of the teammates that he has and doesn't want to leave. I'm not sure what his rationale would be, but ultimately the noise and the news is that the only person that's kind of in the way of the transfer for Bryan Gil to Brighton is Bryan Gil. So we will see if that develops over the course of the day. For me, if he wants to stay and be a part of the squad, I'm okay with it, very much. If he's happy being in rotation, that's fine. You need people and players that are willing to do that. Not everyone can be a starter. And, I still think there's a player in there that's useful in certain scenarios and certain circumstances. However, I'm also very on board with him moving on should the right opportunity for everyone emerge. What worries me a little bit about the Brighton deal is I can see how it would work on paper with him playing in that system, playing under De Zerbi. I think he would benefit from it. But I just wonder how long is their intended use of him? Is he really just there as a stopgap until players like Matoma come back? And if so, then is there really that long-term benefit for the entire process to take place? I'm not sure. I'm unconvinced about it, but it might happen. So we'll keep a lookout for that today, and we'll update you later on in the live stream should anything materialise. Next up on the potential outgoings list is Alejo Veliz, who last night was subject to an inquiry, a loan offer, a straight loan offer, no obligation, no option at all. Morning, mate. For Alejo Veliz to move to Sevilla, which is very interesting because he's injured. In a nutshell, it was only, 4 weeks ago that he got injured, and according to Ange at the time, he was out for several months with a serious knee injury. So I'm not entirely sure how far through his rehab process he is, but it's very odd that you would allow a player to go out on loan halfway through a rehab. Not that I'm doubting or questioning the integrity at all of the medical team at Seville, but I'm certainly curious to know why you would want to loan a player who could be out until, you know, the final 5 or 6 games of the season. I'm guessing maybe part of the process would be that they're not going to pay much of the salary and to try and just use it as a low-risk manoeuvre. And it might help Alejo, but ultimately, you know, again, I find it a little bit too strange to stomach. I don't think Alejo Veliz is going to play that many minutes for Tottenham if everyone's back and fit, with Timo Werner having joined Brennan Johnson, Decky, Sonny, Richarlison. You know, there's a lot of competition at the top end of the pitch that are ahead of him in the list. So if he was ahead of schedule in his rehab, then maybe it makes sense. But again, it's a strange one. Just a strange one. Didn't expect it to happen. Didn't expect it to come in. And, you know, again, what are the intended uses for Sevilla? Do they think he's good enough and ready to start for them, or is he just going to go there and sit on their bench and only be used in a scenario where he's fit later in the season and their starting options are injured? If that's the case, then it's not really one for me, to be honest. But we will see. We shall remain interested in that story. And guys, the only other story that I can really bring to your attention is once again this story that popped up a couple of days ago, and it's the story that Tottenham are trying to hijack Barcelona's move for Swedish sensation, 17-year-old wonder kid from Djurgården, Lucas Bergvall. Noise came out from Fabrizio Romano and other Tier 1 ITKs that Tottenham have been belligerently calling the agent and and his team, saying don't sign for Barca, sign for Tottenham. To the point where Bergvall left Barcelona yesterday having not given them affirmation of his signature, and where his agent flew over to Tottenham to have conversations. And according to some ITKs, not Romano, but some other ITKs, that this is, like, the difference is down to guaranteed playing time in the first team. Now, again, it's a little bit of a concern. If true, I had this conversation with you guys on a live stream yesterday. I don't know how I feel about this intimation from Postecoglou, from Big Ange, in the embargoed part of the press conference section, where he was saying he's never had to be overruled. He's always had the final say on transfers, but that he has diluted that kind of initial statement of every player is a player that I've brought in. Now he's saying, well, no, there are times when the club wants to buy players, and I'll only have to kind of veto it if it gets to the point where I look at it and think I'm never going to use this player. But at the same time, in the same breath, said, but I have very few conversations with the likes of Fabio Paratici. I keep it to a bare minimum. And so you've got to imagine that Lucas Bergvall is a Johan Langer identified target. It suits his kind of skill set probably more than a Paratici or anybody else. But has this passed the sniff test of Ange Postecoglou? Does Ange Postecoglou have more frequent conversations with Johan than he does with Fabio? I'm not sure. But in any event, if you are trying to convince a player to come, and if there's truth to the idea that you promised them game time, can Johan Langer really do that? Is he writing checks that then Postecoglou is forced to cash in order to keep everyone happy after the fact? Again, I'm putting 2 and 2 together here. I don't know if what the journalists in the ITKs were writing is true, but if he was very dead set on going to Barcelona and all of a sudden he's left Barca and thinking about coming to Tottenham, and the story is guaranteed first team minutes. The guy's a midfielder, he's a talented midfielder, but a lot of people are pointing towards this notion that he broke into the Swedish team in January as justification of his talent. Now, I'm not doubting his talent at all. I'm sure he's a brilliant prospect, but in the comment section of the video I did about him a couple of days ago, and shout out to you guys for educating me on this, a lot of the Swedish fans of the channel who understand the Swedish system better, say because there is a break in the Swedish National League system during the winter between December and February because of the weather, there's a couple of international friendlies that take place every year, and those friendlies are used to essentially give minutes to the B level or C level or up and coming talents in the Swedish system. It's not really based on merit, and you wouldn't find the likes of, you know, Kulusevski or whatever playing in those games. You'd find this feeder system. So what I would say is, if that's true, and I'll absolutely trust the guys who said that, then we shouldn't really use the fact that this 17-year-old kid has got international first team experience at the age of 17 as a legitimacy of his talents. His talents speak for themselves, but don't confuse the two. And that shouldn't, again, legitimise or give sincerity to this notion that we should be offering first team football to a player at this stage in the season when we only have one game a week. When you think about the level of calibre of players that would be ahead of him in the midfield spot. You know, he's 17 years old. He's playing for Djurgården, who are fourth in the Swedish league. Is he really going to come in and get minutes ahead of any of the other players that are in here? Basuma, Saar, Bentancur, Madison? Of course not. Højbjerg, Skip? Of course not. So I'm just inferring from, you know, the logical thought processes that I'm going through when you read in the press that the way that Tottenham might be able to hijack this deal is with false promises of first team football. Now, I made a joke on Twitter saying, yeah, we did promise them first team football, we just didn't mention which team it was for, you know, and that he'll be on loan to Plymouth Argyle very soon. But I don't know. I haven't seen as much hype about a 17-year-old from Sweden since Ulrika Jonsson broke onto the scene in the 80s. And, you know, I'm up for it, but not at the expense of your credibility. You know, making those promises, if that's true, seem a little bit disingenuous and, you know, false. So, not for me, guys, not for me. Anyway, that's it from the stories. I don't think there'll be anything else. The Dominic Solanke thing, I'll be incredibly surprised, as I already mentioned. He's playing tonight, so I'll be very surprised if anything happening there. It's going to be an interesting day. You'll see me dotted around on various channels. I'll be with Dave and Johnny, hopefully, at about 4 or 5 o'clock tonight. We'll talk about the game. Talk about things we didn't talk about last night on the post-match fan show. Things that I wanted to talk about and forgot, such as the chemistry that is being forged between Udogie and Timo Werner. 3 games they played. Yesterday, they worked for each other so hard, and they gelled to the point where I think Timo Werner's runs, he's an offside merchant. He's always found offside, but I think that Destiny Udogie had maybe thought about that and was playing the passes to him half a second earlier to keep Timo the right side of the line. Very smart. When Timo lost the ball and Brentford were breaking, Timo fought to get back to help Udogie because Udogie was also caught out of position. Very encouraging to see that. Their 1-2s for the first goal, sensational stuff. It wasn't in just that moment. There was 2 or 3 other chances, 2 or 3 other moments that led to opportunities where these two forged together. And it reminds me a little bit, guys, of the early days of Kulusevski and Matt Doherty. When Kulusevski first came onto the scene, he thrived and flourished in no small part because of his relationship that he immediately clicked with Matt Doherty. And that was in no small part the reason why Tottenham did so well in the second half of Conte's first season. And it almost fell apart when Matt Doherty got injured by Matty Cash in the Aston Villa game. And then Kulusevski had to figure out a relationship with Emerson Royale, I think it was. And it didn't really work, right? So it's encouraging stuff. The chemistry, the relationships that are being forged. And I've got so much to talk about, because I genuinely do think that Ange's take on Destiny last night was correct, that he does far more right than he does wrong. A couple of mistakes, he's learning on the job. He's 21 years old. It's a very difficult position. It's the most difficult position to play in the system. The responsibilities both offensively and defensively. And he made a couple of mistakes. One of them, I think, was an unforced like an invisible mistake even, one that, you know, he didn't even see the player, because why would you expect there to be a player, you know, 12 yards offside, loitering around the goalkeeper, tying up his shoelaces? It was a simple mistake to make, and, you know, before you even realise what you've done, it's too late. The other times you got caught in possession, it happens, but Udogie on the ball is absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to keep pressing that message rather than, you know, should we be concerned about his sloppiness at times? Definitely not. Both Porro and him are going to make mistakes in this system, but it's what they do in the 90 minutes and not the 90 seconds that I think is the most consequential. And I wouldn't want to swap either of these two fullbacks for anybody else in the league right now. I don't know if you feel the same. Let me know. And we'll talk about the game. We'll talk about Everton as well, because that's just around the corner, and everything else. So see you in a few hours. Like, subscribe and comment, guys. Have a wonderful February the 1st. Pinch and a punch and all that stuff. And I'll see you later. And as always, bye-bye.